Can you imagine what a woman will do just to be pregnant and have a child? Once upon a time, in the city of Accra, Abena lay next to her husband Fifi, who was fast asleep. She couldn't hold back the tears that escaped her eyes. 10 years in marriage, and she had no child to show. The event of the previous day flashed in her mind. Her mother-in-law, in front of hundreds of guests at her husband's 40th celebration, called her a barren shell. Fifi, deep in her sleep, heard the sniffles of his wife. Sitting up, he asked, "What's wrong, my love?" Abena ignored his questions and closed her eyes, hoping sleep would come. She cried day and night. Nothing her husband said seemed to console her grieving heart. Everyone had a child except her and her husband. One afternoon, Fifi dashed into the kitchen whilst Abena was making dinner. "Hey, my love, my elder brother is coming back to Ghana on a visit next week," Fifi said with so much excitement. Abena smiled. "That's good to know," she said. Adi, Fifi's brother, had been in the States for so many years, so Abena barely knew him. She sat in silence in her room as she prepared the other room for her brother-in-law. Her husband and other relatives had gone to pick him up from the airport. She had never met her brother-in-law before. She had this weird feeling in the pit of her belly, but she ignored it. A bad feeling she couldn't fathom. Lost in her thought, she heard her husband and her brother's voice chatting in her living room. As she made a way to greet him, she stopped right in her tracks. He was the most handsome man she had ever laid eyes on, beautiful than his brother. His pictures didn't do him justice. She retreated into their room and avoided him throughout the night. The days and weeks that followed, Abena and Adi got closer and closer, made jokes, had casual conversation, and had a good time. Abena enjoyed his company, but kept her distance. Distance so she doesn't fall for his looks and charming personality. One evening, whilst Fifi was on a 2-week work trip, Abena and Adi shared each other's company. He said to her, "I am so sorry you guys can't have a baby." Abena's brows furrowed. "Can't?" she said. Adi said nothing and continued. When Fifi was 12 years old, he fell from a tree and was partially paralyzed. For some time, he was able to recover, but the doctor said he wouldn't be able to father a child. Abena's gaze turned sharply to Adi. "What did you just say?" she asked with shock written all over her face. "He did not tell you the reason he couldn't father a child?" Abena laughed hysterically and said, "You are lying, right?" Adi looked at her. Was she mad? "Everyone in our family knows this story," Adi added. "Your mom included?" Abena asked. Adi nodded. "Yes, my mom included." She broke down and ran into her room, closing the door behind her, leaving Adi confused. Fifi had told him he had already told his wife about his condition, so why was she acting this way, he thought. Abena cried her eyes out, reminiscing on how her mother-in-law had insulted her and called her a barren shell on her husband's birthday, and he, in turn, said nothing. They knew I wasn't the problem, but yet made a mockery of my childlessness, she thought. I will make them pay, she vowed to herself. Abena went to Adi and said, sorry about yesterday. I was just sad about my husband's condition and all that he had to go through as a child. Please don't say anything to him about what happened yesterday. Adi was confused but nodded in agreement. That evening, in the guise of conversation and happy laughter, Abena served Adi a drink and laced it with an aphrodisiac. Suddenly, Adi began to feel the effect of the drug. As much as he tried to resist, he couldn't. With a newfound strength, he went to bed with Abena, his brother's wife. The days and weeks that followed, Abena pretended to have no recollections of the affair she had due to her drunkenness and went about her duties like nothing happened. Adi, who felt shameful of his act, remained silent and was glad in his heart that Abena had no memories of his betrayal. One morning, whilst Fifi was bathing, Abena rushed into the washroom, vomiting. He looked at her with a furrowed brow and with suspicion. Are you okay, my love? He asked with concern, laced with suspicion. I'm okay, just pregnant, she said casually and walked out of the washroom, leaving her husband speechless. Hell broke loose that day. Fifi, enraged, shouted at his wife, who calmly sat and watched him. Who is the father of that thing in your belly? You are, Abena said sarcastically. Fifi turned the whole house upside down in anger and frustration. You whore, he said, after all I have done for you. Later, Fifi called for a meeting, inviting all the families on both sides and elders in their family, prepared to shame his wife and annul their marriage. He began saying to Abena's parent, Sir, your daughter is pregnant and I am not the father. Therefore, I would like you to ask her who the father of the child is. And also, I cannot stay with someone who cheats on her husband, so I would like to annul the marriage. Abena sat silently next to her mother, who had begun to cry. The wise father of Abena asked Fifi a question that left him speechless. My son, you and my daughter have been trying to have a child for years now, to no avail. She has taken seed and is not yours? How do you know the baby isn't yours? Fifi was dumbfounded. How does he explain this without revealing his secret? Abena, who had been silent for a while, suddenly spoke. That is because he is impotent. A loud gasp escaped the elders sitting in the meeting. He was impotent all along. He knew, and so did his family. Yet they connived, married me, and made me feel like I was at fault, like I was barren. How do you know? Fifi was shocked. Abena smiled and ignored his question. The baby in my womb is for your brother Adi. Another gasp, this time louder, escaped from the members of the family. Adi, who had returned to the US, knew nothing of this meeting. Fifi, realizing his wife knew his secret, began to cry, begging his wife to forgive him. She ignored him, and before she left, she said to her that, I'm done with this sham of a marriage. If he had told me of his situation, we could have adopted or found other ways to make children. But yet, he watched people degrade me day and night and said nothing, but gave me comfort. But all along, he was the problem. Father, please annul this marriage like he said to you before. After saying this, Abena left the meeting without looking back. Fifi went into depression after everything that happened. Abena also, after 9 months, gave birth to 2 beautiful children. And the question still remains, what will happen to Adi and Abena?